Welcome to Local Everywhere. I'm Cynthia Pooler. My guest today is Rosemary Armao, and Rosemary teaches a class called Media in the Digital Age. So, Rosemary, first of all, I got your name right,
You
correct?
did. Thank you. I
Good, good,
appreciate
good,
that.
good. So, tell us a little bit about media in the digital age and what that means for the arts in general.
Okay. This is a course taught at the University of Albany, where I'm a visiting professor. It's offered for upperclassmen as part of the journalism program. It's a lecture and writing course, and it's designed to make students think about how media has changed, and more importantly, how overwhelming it is in our entire lives. The media, and especially as it exists in the modern age, has changed the way we do everything. To buy a ticket to a concert now is completely different than when you and I grew up, Cynthia. You don't stand in lines anymore. You don't pay with real money. Everything is changed. And you can say that about everything, the way we get information, the way we interact with one another or don't interact with them, how we are entertained. You name the topic, and it's had severely been impacted by changes in technology, mostly in the media. And
Well,
so I try to get students to think about it, because my students, don't forget, are all like in their 20s. They grew
right,
up in this digital age. They
right.
never knew anything else. They regard me as I'm sort of a dinosaur. I'm a relic. Tell us what it was like in the olden days.
My God. But I live right near Delaware Avenue. So it was so heartbreaking to see the Spectrum close.
Yeah. The
And
Spectrum and the Madison as well now.
yep, yep.
And I also feel that sadness, but then I look back at my own habits, and when was the last time I went there? I don't think I've been to either of those theaters, though I love them, since before the pandemic. And I can point to other things. Sports Illustrated is dying or dead. Uh, I thought, I'm not even a sports fan, and I loved reading that magazine for its investigative reporting on sports. I'm sad that it's gone, but when was the last time I bought a Sports Illustrated? National Geographic. I remember sneaking into my uncle's house, where he had a bookcase full of the old National Geographics, and looking at pictures of bare-breasted Native women, and reading the stories and looking at those pictures. I hate that it's gone, that those amazing photographers don't exist anymore. Yet, when was the last time I bought a National Geographic? Whether we like it or not, we feel nostalgia for those old forms, but we're not using them anymore. And then I'll bring up newspapers, which I spent all of my adult life working
Right.
for, caring about, thinking it was the most important thing on earth. And newspapers in paper form, and increasingly in any form, are not existing anymore.
Right. Now, when you talk to your students and you talk about like when we were their age, and you know, things have changed so much. When you talk about being their age and
Mhm.
how we gathered information and what we did, do they look at you like you come
Oh,
from
yeah.
this age?
The Stone Age. Oh, yeah, I am a dinosaur. But what I try to do is learn from them too. Right now, the dominant medium, it's not movies. It isn't TV, definitely not TV or newspapers, not print at all. Magazines hardly exist. It's gaming. And we all game to a certain extent. You probably do Wordle, but these kids are deeply into gaming. And music is affected by that. The music, the art, the graphics, it's all now coming to them in a different form of media than we ever used at all. So I have a whole section on media. I can't teach it. I don't know anything about it. I make them go. I find speakers, of course, experts, but then I make them do the reporting and come and talk to me about it. And how is that different than what I did? One of the lessons of media in the digital age is that technology has changed everything, and yet we've not completely lost all the old forms. So, for example, video has taken over everything, but we still have still photographs. Still photographs are amazing. Just look on Instagram or on Facebook any day, and you'll see fantastic photos taken with not cameras, but our cell phones, because that's what we use now. But the quality is amazing, the composition. Um, so it's the same with all media. They look back because they want to know what's changed and what's different. Can I tell you about the best exercise I do all year with them?
Of course.
Okay, it's called a media inventory. And what they have to do is keep a list during the first day of every time they use something online or a media. It can be watching television, of course, but it also can be music that they stream, apps that they use, TikTok, social media, all the social medias they use. Everything that they do that involves a smartphone or a laptop or an iPad, they have to keep track of. And then for the next 2 days, they can't use any of those. They have to warn their parents, I'm not going to be calling you. They have to, they're still, I do say that I allow them to do schoolwork, which is also mostly done online now. I don't want them going to other professors and saying, oh, my journalism professor told me I didn't have to do the homework. That they're not allowed to, but everything else they have to stop. And then they have to write a report on it. Those are eye-opening. They are incredibly bored without their media because they play music all day when they're walking to class. They have earbuds in their ears, even when they walk into my classrooms, when they're walking around outside, music, when they're doing homework. They had trouble. Many of them have trouble doing homework without being distracted by music in their ears. They also can't find things. No GPS. That's, you get that in your cell phone and Google Maps. They couldn't use that. So one student wrote about how he was headed for the Walmart, which he had driven to several times before. He's not a freshman. And yet he didn't have the GPS this time, missed a turn, should have taken 10 minutes. It took 20 because he was wandering around, lost in the wilds of Albany for a while. The students also reported that they um, they had so much more time. The digital living in a digital age, we feel busy all the time because they fill every minute music, or they check their messages, or they are texting. Every minute is filled, and so you feel super busy. When they are forced to stop, suddenly they're reporting they had time to do homework. I did my homework because I didn't have anything else to do. That appeared as writing in yes, in several of the papers. They were able to think more clearly because they're not distracted. They were moved enough by this to say, I'm going to try this more often, not just as an assignment, but maybe once for one day a month or 2 days a month. I'm going to just cut off all the apps and see what happens. And if I'm going on and on here, I apologize, but
Good.
The Pew Foundation, the Research Foundation, just did a study. Now, they didn't have the students or young people actually cut off their phones, but they surveyed them, and they found that, and this is staggering, 95% of teenagers in America right now have access to a smartphone. 95%. And the pressure to get those starts early. My granddaughter's not even 11. She's very angry at her parents that they're sticking with the rules. She has to be 13 before she can get her phone. 60% of teenagers right now use TikTok, Snapchat, or Instagram. These are highly visual. There's very few words. It's very ephemeral. You see the video or the photo, and then an hour later, it's gone. You move on to the next thing. And when asked, 74% of these teenagers, and remember, 95% have phones. 74% of them said that when the phones are taken away, they feel less happy. They feel disoriented, or just something's missing. They kind of reach automatically for the phone, even though they know that it isn't there. At the same time, 72%, almost the same, 72% said it's also a lot more peaceful without those phones. So
Mm.
it's really interesting, the impact of this technology and of media on our lives today. Some of it's not all bad either. I am a
So,
dinosaur, but I don't think it's all bad. Digital has made it easier to pursue hobbies, to find friends with similar interests. It's easier to do homework. It's easier to be creative. So I'm going on and on.
go
Let you
ahead.
get a
Go
word
ahead.
in edgewise.
So, do you think that overall, being in the digital age has transformed art as we know it today?
Absolutely. That's the assignment I have my students working on right now. And this came about almost by accident. I believe in building, lessons around what's really happening. And for some reason, my journalism class is taught in the Fine Arts Building at UAlbany. And that houses this very fine museum, the Fine Arts Museum. It's all contemporary art. That is art being made right now. And in addition to the museum, right next to, right down the hall from my classroom, is the museum collections. They store prints and photos and paintings that belong in the university's collection. And they've now opened it up so you can go in and look at these things. So I spent one day I left class and I went in and I'm wandering around. I thought how incredibly terrific it was. And there was not a single student in that place. And when you go into the museum, there are rarely students in there. Professors go, or students who are forced by professors to go, but the students on themselves don't. We don't teach art and music in school anymore. They are losing their appreciation for that old form, that traditional form of self-expression, painting and art and music. So I made them all go. That we went as a class trip, as a field trip, first to the museum and then to the collection. I had the curators talk to them, and we're talking to artists as well about how different uh, art is. For example, that's what I'm using, art in this class as a means of expression than say writing a news article. In a news article, I'm hitting you over the head with exactly what my message is. I want you to understand this from reading my story. But in
Right.
a painting, it doesn't work the same way. And these students, born and raised in a digital age, have no patience and they have no training. As I've said, we don't teach it in school. So they just say, I don't get it. And they want to move on. They want to flip on to the next thing. So I forced them to confront these paintings. They had to pick one that spoke to them for some reason and explore why it did, what it said to them, what associations in their own lives they felt with it. And then they had to do research to find out what the artist was really thinking. And the bigger message is, what does it mean when you're expressing something that you don't care if anybody else gets it or not? It's personal to you, but you are putting it out there for other people. So
Right.
what is the purpose of this exercise? And on top of all that, Cynthia, of course, art has changed in the methods and the techniques because of technology. Lots of art is influenced by computers or done on computers. That's changed the art that we have now. So I want the kids to think all about this. And I've just thrown them right into, I just like threw them into the deep water of art appreciation in a digital age. Make sense of this. What do you like? What do you not like? Do you feel frustrated that you don't understand it? And I have loved, I've done the assignment. I did the assignment when I was teaching at RPI, and they're not even journalism students, they're STEM students. So it made them crazy that they didn't immediately understand and could analyze what was going on in the art. And
Mhm.
the writing about it is very illuminating.
Mhm.
So
So, I want to use the phrase baby, we're both baby boomers.
we are,
Uh,
yes.
So, we grew up appreciating, the works of, like, if you went to the World's Fair, Michelangelo,
Yep.
or if you went to Paris, going to, the museum and seeing the Mona Lisa. And these are masterpieces from years ago.
Right.
s- That's timeless.
Right.
Do younger people appreciate and understand art back then?
Oh, that's hard to say. I'm not an expert. I should ask me after I get their papers back. I would say most of all, they're not exposed to it. We don't teach, we do a terrible job in our elementary and high school levels teaching art. And I would say the same for music and dance as well. But if you're not exposed to it and you're seeing it for the first time, what do you really get out of it? Well, all art, I believe, is made better with explanation. The little placards that are put next to paintings in the museum, they're great. Don't you use those as a crutch. Or if you have a curator or even just an art lover who's standing next to you talking about it, it makes the experience richer for you. Recently, last Christmas, we went to Rome. I'm very lucky. I got a chance to travel to Rome, and I went to the Borghese galleries, which I've never seen. I totally adore the work here. I studied some of these when I was in college in art history, and now you're seeing them in almost the flesh. It's sculpture, but it looks almost like flesh. And I stood there with my friends talking about what I had learned, and a crowd gathered around, other people who were there listening, because you have to have like a guide, I think, through some art. And these students have not had that before. I hope that I can't teach them art history when I'm teaching, journalism, but I hope that I'm inspiring them to learn a little bit more.
Okay, let's talk about something a little more contemporary. Maybe contemporary for us, but maybe not the next generation, the generation after that. We grew
Yeah.
up we grew up with the Beatles,
Hmm.
you know?
Yep.
You and I both remember when they were on Ed Sullivan,
Absolutely. Big
and
day in my life.
and we saw their evolution from these four young guys into the icons that they became.
Right.
Do
Legends.
do younger people appreciate the music of the Beatles?
Okay, they do. And I think this is different, Cynthia. You know why? Because we were their parents. They grew up listening to the Beatles. It was on the car radio when they were driven to school. It was played at home. They know the Beatles. My sons, I'm a boomer, so my sons are, they're in their 30s and 40s. They know the words and the lyrics better than I do. And technology has helped there too. All of the Beatles stuff has been remastered. It sounds better now than we were listening to it back in the 60s. Ed Sullivan's on TV, on the little tiny TVs, did not
Right.
sound as good as the Beatles do now. So yes, the Beatles are appreciated. Is opera appreciated? It had a resurgence because of technology. In colonial times and early times in the U.S., opera was very popular because people then knew other languages. They were possibly, many of them came from another country. They knew those languages as their own. Then we lost that because we came America, which only speaks English, and we don't even study languages until elementary school is over. But then came super titles. You didn't have to know the language. You could just read along as the singers were singing. So opera had a resurgence, but we don't teach music. And opera's expensive. So even if you love it, you're not taking your kids to the opera. I go myself. I have to save up for it to go to see something at the Met. So that art form, I'm afraid, is lost. And contemporary music, um, it's also not appreciated. It sounds to us boomers raucous and discordant, and young people are not listening to, they're not going to concerts. I worry about music and dance too, the same way. You send students, college students, to see performances, and they don't know what the heck is going on. They don't like not knowing.
So when you say they don't go to concerts, I mean, in the summertime, concert at SPAC is a big deal,
And
right?
it's all gray-haired audiences.
Oh, okay.
I mean, look at them. Look at any of the performances I've gone to. Yeah, there's lots of boomers. I mean, hell, we're still the biggest demographic. So there's still audiences for it now. But what happens in the future is what I'm saying. What contemporary music, Cynthia, can you name that has caught on as the Beatles did? What's as big as the Beatles now? Nothing. It's all retro. We go back into the past. We still have, as boomers, an outside influence on the culture of this country, I'm afraid. And
Okay.
what's their own? What is the art form of the modern age? I suspect it has something to do with games. There's lots of interesting stuff being done, but it hasn't broken through yet. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I just see the problems.
So the concert, or the places where you could go and hear live music, if you're a younger person, uh, they don't go and see it or hear it.
Well, I mean, I can't, that's not a blanket statement. That's not
Okay.
fair. You still see crowds at jazz fests and even at operas, they're filled, or shows, but it's harder now. It's much harder. What's the reason to go to a live event? Actually, I'm going to switch here. We just had a discussion about this, how the music industry has changed. No CDs now, you stream everything. That
Right,
changes the whole economics of music. Artists cannot make money by selling records or even CDs anymore. You can stream it. And these kids know how to get everything online, illegal or not, they just get it. So the only way artists can make money these days are touring. And that's why you're seeing tours come back, like the Eras tour by
right.
Taylor Swift, and
Yeah.
that is bringing in money. So what I'm saying about no one going to concerts, that may well be in the process of changing right now.
Well, Taylor Swift, she made a movie about that, and
The documentary, yes.
I saw her at the Spectrum, and she sold that documentary to Disney, and she made a bundle with that.
Yep, yep. That's the way now that artists can make money. It isn't through just you cut a record and then you sell the record. You sell millions of records if you're really lucky, and then you're a rich person. Elvis would and even then, he went on to other medium too, or mediums. Media is the plural. I have to tell my students that, and they're converging. So if you're a singer, you're also going to make a movie, or you're going to be on TV shows. You'll do cameos on TV shows, or you'll be in the news. So that's a difference in the digital age too. And there's not little silos of mediums.
So you think that you know technology is changing the way people view art, right?
Absolutely. Yes, I do
Okay.
think that.
W-
If you go to a museum and you're staring at a picture on a wall, you're looking at the brush strokes and you're reading the placard that explains it, and you're listening to other people and watching their reaction to it. That is a completely different experience than you take your little phone, which is this big. I'm holding up my
Right.
little, and I have a big iPhone, but it's tiny compared to the real thing. And you're looking
Like
at it, and then
mine,
with a,
right?
yes, like that, exactly. And you look at a picture there, and then with your thumb, you flip up and you move on to the next one. You spend less time. You don't look at it. You don't contemplate it. You don't anticipate and enjoy the views of others around you. It's a totally different experience. My
And
students noticed that when they were at the museum at UAlbany.
now, when do you think everything started changing? In the
Oh, it's
90s, in the 2000s? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, the World Wide Web made the internet accessible to all in the early 1990s. So
Right.
I have to peg it to that. It's accelerating though, because one thing has led to another. Digital cameras have made art, photography different. And it's like one technological innovation has built on another. So the speed of the change is much greater now, as is the penetration of the new technology. In the 1990s, I had a laptop. It cost me over $3,000. It was at the time the most powerful computer on the campus at the University of Missouri. Now, of course, it's in a landfill someplace. It's worthless. So the speed, the availability, and just the sheer number of innovations has changed everything again.
This doesn't pertain to art, but it sure pertains to technology. Every November 22nd, I put on Facebook, what if there had been people with cell phones
Mhm.
in Dallas that
Mhm.
day? How
Uh,
di- how different our
how
world
different would it have turned out? You're right.
is.
Um, I do another exercise with the class. I haven't done it this year, maybe I should, where they have to imagine that the Civil War is happening with the same technology we do now. So there's people live tweeting battles. There are people taking photography way more advanced than Matthew Brady. Remember, his pictures were shocking at the time because they showed soldiers dead, but you just saw basically it could be a log lying on the ground, and now you can see blood and wounds. You can see video of the shot happening. So what would it be like, and how does that change news if you could cover it in a different way? The answers, students see different things in what happens, but yeah, it's mind-boggling. It's just mind-boggling.
S-
The other thing I like in the change is that no medium has actually ever gone away just because there's been a new innovation. So radio was supposed to be killed by TV. It was not. It's supposed to be killed now by streaming. It is not. Podcasts is the new radio, and it has a lot of the same features of the early radio. Intimacy, the closeness of talking to an audience one-on-one. Um, Dialogue, all of that still remains. It's just been reformatted. So the way that technology has affected us, here's another big thing. We don't read anymore. I grew up, I always loved to, I'd rather read than do anything else except possibly eat. That's the only other thing I like better. And so I would have big, thick, really heavy books, and I was proud that I could read them. We don't read anymore. We seek out information, or we look for the main points. We skim. When we're reading, try reading a book right now, and you'll find yourself in the middle of a chapter, even reaching for your phone, as if something cataclysmic has happened that you have to check on it. So our concentration has changed, our memory has changed. Um, it's all, everything has changed. Mind-boggling.
On Sunday, I had watched Gone with the Wind on Turner Classic
Oh,
Movies, and I have Gone with the Wind on my Nook, so I started reading it, and I read the first couple of chapters, and I said, "This is too long, too drawn out. I'm not
there you
interested."
go. There you go. See, and Gone with the Wind. It's not PC to say that anymore because, of course, it glorifies a Southern mentality that was anti-Black and actually pro KKK. So that aside, it is a remarkable book. I know this because it is my mother's favorite. She is 98, so cut her some slack here. She has read the book 14 times. We have all
Wow.
read it. I have read it aloud to my mother because she can't read by herself anymore. It is a remarkable book, and you're right. It's going to disappear because it's 900 pages long. Daniel Borstein was one of the great intellectuals of American museum and intellectual thought. He wrote great books about greatness, really, about what makes people great inventors or thinkers. I have such trouble getting through it now. It feels like homework. This is
Right.
bad. This is very, very bad.
Yeah. So ultimately, what do you foresee in the future?
I do not foresee it. I think it's just completely out of bounds. My goal in my class is to help students see the string, to see what was in the past, what's been carried forward and still is there, and what now in the future is great that we old boomers ought to get on board with, because there is a whole lot of that stuff, and to see the continuity of it. All of this stuff, all media comes from the same urges within humans to connect with each other, to inform, to leave a legacy. All of that is exactly the same now with Snapchat chat and Facebook as it was with cave drawings. It's the same impulses. That's what I want my students to see.
Okay, Rosemary, this has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. And I hope that we can have more conversations about technology and art in the future. So you've been listening to Rosemary Armao. I'm Cynthia Pooler. This is Local Everywhere. If you like this show, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Rosemary, it's been a pleasure catching up with you. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great day.